you focus on my face? Tap the screen, it's out of focus. Must keep hands on 10 to 2.
There you go.
Thank you.
Crystal clear.
Today I am doing my most important love log ever. Dun dun dun. But this is not just a love log. This is going to be my most important vlog ever. It applies to law and to life. Any service where you service the public, any profession where you interact with the public, how to identify problem clients. I gave a speech on this at a law symposium before YouTube. This advice is applicable to any service-based industry, and it's critical not just from an economic perspective, but from a spiritual perspective. Come into the frame here. There's a saying that 20% of your clients are responsible for 80% of your revenue, and 20% of your clients are responsible for 80% of your heartache. So pick your clients wisely. Think about it when you're working with your tadpole. 20% of your tadpoles are going to be responsible for 80% of your search results. Is that true or is that true? I don't even know what you do for a living. Have fun. Booyah. Kiss. Yeah, baby, we got it!
It's gonna be edited out.
Jokes aside, I do know what my wife does for a living. She's a postdoc in neurophysiology. Hello. She works at mapping the brain and determining which neurons control which eye movements. Yeah. Do you know how to identify trouble clients? No? Very honest? Generally speaking, the 3 big red flags: urgency, flattery, and responsibility. And now I shall elaborate. Urgency. Whenever a client comes to you and it's an emergency, a flag should go up. The first question I ask is it a real emergency or a perceived emergency? Real emergency, they have to be at court tomorrow and they need a lawyer. Perceived emergency, they need to be in court in a few months, but it's important to them that day, so it's an emergency to them that day. If it's a perceived emergency, beware, because there's a reflection on judgment. If it's a real emergency, I then ask the next question. Why is it a real emergency? Is it a real emergency because they were served with documents the night before and they need to be in court tomorrow? Or is it a real emergency because they've gone through 3 lawyers over the last 2 weeks, had fights with all of them, and now they're down to their last lawyer the night before a hearing date? If it's a real emergency through no fault of their own, okay. If it's a real emergency through what can be suspicious behavior and an indication for future behavior, a flag should go off. To our next point. Flattery. Flattery is the next behavior that raises a red flag in my soul. And you'll notice that flattery and urgency tend to go hand in hand. The difficult client will come to you in an urgent state, perceived or real, and flatter you, letting you think that you're the only person who can possibly... My breath smell funny? That you're the only lawyer in the world that can resolve their problem at this point in time. And there is a difference between coming highly recommended and being the only lawyer who's smart enough, young enough, aggressive enough to tackle this person's problem. If someone tries to tell me that I am a savior, I'm a great many things, but I'm not that, and I get suspicious. Okay. Oh gosh, this is hot. Most often, excessive flattery is strictly to distract you or to lull you into a sense of confidence for some other purpose that you have to be asking yourself right from the get-go. And if someone thinks they know you sufficiently well to shower you with flattery based only on your website bio or a picture they saw of you in the paper, it goes to a question of judgment that, in my experience, will come back to bite you in the butt later on. Which brings us to the 3rd red flag, responsibility. So this one is a peculiar one because at least in the practice of law, you sort of expect every client to say that nothing is their fault. Oh, how's it going? But with the potential trouble client, you're going to notice that nothing is ever their fault. Everything is always somebody else's fault in the most conspiratory manners and in the most subtle manner. And all 3 of these red flags play together to some extent. It's an emergency, you are the only lawyer who's right for them, and everything that's happened to them up until that point has never been their fault. And you need to be especially careful when the exculpation of responsibility is coupled with flattery. When they say, my other lawyers were great and smart, but they were just too busy for me. Or I was too small a client for the big law firm. When someone tries to pass the buck while complimenting the person, bells should be going off. The flattery is a distraction, and sure as sugar you can bet on it, they'll be saying the same thing about you to another lawyer somewhere down the line. I didn't slow anything down there. This is literally how slow the dog walks. Good dog. Okay, let's go. Oh boy. All right, we're taking a little break here because apparently it's a little hot outside and the dog doesn't want to walk anymore. Some other red flags, but less big red flags than the 3 we've gone over already. My personal favorite, the promise of future business. When a client now is promising me business in the future, like with flattery, there's a car coming, hold on one second. Like with flattery, it is a distraction from the present. The promise for future business generally leads to negotiations over payments for current business. That can be a problem. Excessive name dropping. Also, like flattery and the promise of future business, it's intended to elevate someone. Flattery is intended to elevate you. Excessive name dropping is intended to elevate the client in your eyes. Look at all the fancy people they know. I find that excessive name dropping goes hand in hand with the promise of future business. Take me on, give me a discount now, and I will connect you with all of these fancy people that I know. Generally doesn't lead to good places. And lastly, retainer. Any client who fights you for your retainer is going to be a problem client. Period. Period. Anyone who doesn't think you're worth your retainer at present is not going to think you're worth your payment in the future. Anyone who has difficulty remitting a retainer to you in the present is going to have difficulty making a payment to you in the future. The mentor I respect the most, my father, always told me that you are going to get stiffed from time to time, regardless of all the precautions you take. You are going to get stiffed on a payment from a client from time to time. The beauty is that you can sort of select which clients are going to be more likely to stiff you. If you knowingly take on a client with financial difficulties, you're going to be doing someone a service, knowing the risk. And so you just have to calculate what the risk is, what the benefit is, how much fulfillment it's going to give you as a lawyer, knowing that it's going to be more likely with that particular client that they are going to end up not being able to pay you. So that's it. And the most important takeaway, all of this advice applies mutatis mutandis to all service-based industries. Replace the word lawyer with contractor, agent, marketing company. This applies to all service-based industries where you are taking on clients from the general public. Anybody coming up to you with an emergency, everyone they've tried in the past hasn't worked and it's always been the other person's fault. You are the right person for them. They need you at this very moment in time. Flags should be going off. And if they don't want to give you a retainer for the work that they absolutely need you and only you to do, you have to make a decision. Is the potential money worth the potential headache? 20% of your clients are responsible for 80% of your headaches. Never forget that. Peace out.